We have come a long way from the time Dobbin trotted down the country road. Our methods of living, our methods of doing things have changed. The history of agriculture, from the ox team, coal oil lamp, red flannel days, to our present mechanized farming, is a fascinating story. Why not compare yesterday with today? Plowing, good old days when a day's work was measured not by what a man could do, but by what he could stand. Now, tell that modern plowman to let go of the steering wheel and grip the plow handles and hear what he'd say. The old-time middle busting of Dixie maybe was fair enough to the mules. The man did 51% of the work. Why this tractor middle buster of today? Because human nature wanted to climb out of the furrow from behind a mule and ride. In those early days, a farmer developed his bunions, pushed on the lines, and harrowed 6 acres a day. Would you call him lazy now? Cushion seat. With that little tractor harrowing 50 acres a day. What? Pioneer planting small grain. It took rhinoceros hide on the ankles to stand the wrinkles in those leather boots. And grandfather's corn planting. Imagine him today rolling over a standard half-mile cornfield. Bull of the Woods one-row cotton planting beat granddad's hoe, but that's all it did beat. The nation's garden has grown from the little home truck patches of 60 years ago to acres of vegetables for city tables. Where are the folks today who could or would do all this work without improved machines? Today's power vegetable planter. He might crawl along dropping seeds by hand, but he believes in self-preservation. He knows his onions. Present-day corn planter, comfort, speed, 2 things human nature demands. The old one-mule, one-ox cotton planters are being replaced by tractor planters, like mud roads and mule teams, replaced by concrete and automobiles. Today, the farmer fills the grain drill hopper with seed, rides like a manager, and plants in comfort. By the time Granddad chopped 2 acres, the weeds where he started needed chopping again. Modern cultivation doesn't ache the arms like the old hoe. He'll let the hoe rust on the peg. And here's he-hawing cotton cultivation the old way, 2 or 3 or more times to a row. But today, this method of cultivating is better, on time, done with profit. What else do we want? From the time man came out of the cave or down from the tree and began to stir the soil, weeds have grown to plague him. He fought them with hand hoes, with wheel hoes, and now with these motor tools, he licks the weeds to a standstill. It took a strong back and stomach upholstered with pork and potatoes to wade across a field with the old scythe. That's the way their great-granddads raked the hay. That must have been the way Adam raked it. Do we want to go back? Old-timers told of art in pitching hay, but believe us, it took wrestler shoulders and sole-leather hands. Here's an old-timer working between meals, and he needed victuals, too, 3 times a day for that hand-pitching job. You know anybody who thinks this Farmall mower is too easy and too fast? Well, we might find him a scythe. Raking hay with a modern side delivery, 50 times faster, 50 times easier, 50 times cheaper, and a better job. Now the loader rolls it onto the rack. The man at the receiving end isn't exactly on vacation, but he's not heaving it up from the ground by Armstrong like the old-timers did. Modern hoister in a 100-acre hay harvest. How long would it take that old-timer with the hand fork to push that crop into the mow? Here's the last word, and a neat performance, too. That pickup baler taking the crop right from the windrow cuts out some of the middlemen in processing hay and straw. By starting early and working late, a pioneer with his hand fork could dig potatoes almost as fast as the relatives could eat them. This up-to-date method roots them out perfectly and without damage. Plenty for French fries, mashed, or the coats on. In early days, each family with 2 or 3 cows milked by hand was a different story from today's job of milking millions of cows. No machine has done more to relieve farm women and children from drudgery than the mechanical milker. For proof, consult farm women and children. Old-fashioned way skimming cream from milk. How many housewives would it take to skim for the ice cream and soda trade today? Her fingers are clean, all right, but wouldn't a farm family rather have cream from this modern cream separator? And confidentially, she'll soon have a motor attachment on that separator because already most of her neighbors just turned the switch. Ask a present-day farmer how he'd like to ride home from town 40 miles an hour and start grain harvesting this way. They dropped those sickles like they were hot when cradles were invented. Even with the cradle, no farmer was happy with that back-bending grind of harvest. Happy day when a farmer invented the old self-rake that cut and laid the grain in bunches for hand binding. The farmer didn't want to stoop to bind bundles, so a farmer's invention elevated the grain to a binding platform. But the farmer didn't want to even bind bundles by hand. So another farmer invented the binder, tying bundles with wire. The wire binder was improved by twine binding. Then came larger fields, more grain, calling for power, speed, answered by the tractor binder of today, working with accuracy and a mighty saving of human energy. And who wants to or should waste it? Days of George Washington, grain was flailed from the straw by main strength and a bit of skill. No farmer did that because he liked it. Grim necessity mothered invention of the thresher that swallows the bundles and delivers clean grain to the truck. And now comes the combine, threshing grain right in the field. Once over and it's all over. The last word in streamlined grain harvesting is the combine. And the last letter in that last word are these little babies made because farmers demanded such machines. The combine threshes wheat, oats, rye, barley, buckwheat, flax, beans, any grains or grasses that produce seed. And in addition, no man strains his suspenders operating the combine. When 16 hours were a standard day and no place but bed to go in the evening, ox-team slow motion paid the taxes. But today's farmer puts more hustle into load moving. If he didn't, he knows the world would move on and leave him right where it left him. Now, the modern motor truck moves farm freight at a rate that would have stopped old Dobbin's heart before they got him hitched to a wagon. A man needed high horsepower rating to wrestle corn by the old method. He didn't complain much because a tired man can't think much. But he did think, I'll find an easier way. And he did. A farmer invented this corn binder because he refused to wear his heart out the hardest way. This man labor enough now just throwing the corn bundles downhill into the ensilage cutter that chops and blows them into the silo. The whole modern field ensilage harvester chopping silage right in the field. No human hands touch that silage. From truck to blower, the silage is surely being hooped into the silo. Old-timer husking corn from the shop. He handled the crop so many times he almost wore it out. Then in the prairie fields, corn was husked by hand in mud and cold. To a man in a big field, it was a long time from October to Christmas. Today, frost on the pumpkin. The farmer dons his mittens and heavy underwear and rides with the modern corn picker. Here's the original corn sheller, which may have been all right for producing old Johnny cake or homemade hominy. And this one-man sheller was okay for a bushel now and then. But for shelling the whole crop, and a big crop at that, off the cobs before Wednesday noon, this is the present-day method. Thus we see agriculture has come a long way. Today, farming is a business, an industry, a profession, all wrapped into a good way of living. What brought this change in farm methods? Not the soil, which is much the same as yesterday. Not the seasons nor the clouds, which come and go as always. Not the muscle of man or beast. What brought this change in farming? The power of motors, drawing better machines, doing the work easier, quicker, on time, better, and with more profit.
bountiful agriculture is taken for granted by most Americans. It's pleasant to think in terms of permanent and profitable farming, of fields and fields of cotton, corn, grain, tobacco. It's nice to dream of plentiful harvests from ever-productive lands, year after year, generation after generation. Unfortunately, this is not the whole truth. Profitable farming is not always permanent. It is not inherited from generation to generation. Today in America, there are too many examples of unprofitable farming. Too many farmers scraping a miserable existence from soil-depleted fields. Profitable operations cease and farming becomes a hard way to make a poor living. When soil fertility is lost, when the land has been worn out, it cannot produce profitable crops. Millions of acres of American farmland have been laid waste and abandoned because of poor farming and erosion. The land stands idle and the house is empty. Financial ruin has followed misuse of the land. Once beautiful homes, supported by fertile land, in too short a time have become only ugly reminders. Surrounded by decadent agriculture, merchants failed and towns have been deserted. Nature's inevitable laws are punishing people with poverty, the certain penalty for continually taking more from the soil than is returned to it. Substandard living cannot be averted when the land is neglected. Who is to blame? No single group or generation. This agricultural decline started long ago. Originally, nature endowed this vast country with great expanses of fertile soil. The soil was rich in organic matter, minerals and plant foods, and safely protected against the elements. Roots of trees, shrubs, and grasses bound the soil together. The winds could howl and the rains beat down, but the soil remained secure, and the water drained gradually into clear streams. But this perfect combination created by Mother Nature had to be disturbed. Our forefathers needed food, so they cleared the land and tilled the soil. In a comparatively short time in terms of world history, we became a leading nation of the world. Our growth was phenomenal. This rapid expansion drew heavily upon our natural resources, and the soil was no exception. More and more land was brought into cultivation because more food was needed for an ever-increasing population. But growing food was not the sole reason for overexpanded land use. Cash cropping, growing crops for cash returns, for expanding markets, was the greatest cause of land misuse and soil depletion. Certain sections favored certain cash crops. Grain here, corn there, tobacco here, and cotton there. When there was virgin soil, the plants thrived and cash cropping was profitable. But year after year in the same fields, cotton was followed by cotton. Corn was followed by corn, and tobacco was followed by tobacco. This continual and repeated one cropping generation after generation wore out the soil. Fertility was drained, organic matter used up, and crop yields declined. The worn-out soil lost its ability to hold water, so the water ran. The little trickles between the rows grew to rills. The rills grew to rivulets. The rivulets grew to torrents. As the water ran faster, more and more topsoil was carried away with it. The more topsoil that was washed away, the lower became the crop yields. To get more good soil, to produce better crops, timberlines were pushed back. But when the slopes were bared and tilled, the water ran still faster and topsoil washed away quicker. When crop yields became too low, farmers moved. They moved to Mississippi and Texas, to Kentucky, Indiana, and Iowa, then to Colorado and to California. Plowing and grazing with no regard for the land, they moved on until there were no new places to go. In the wake of this reckless exploitation of the land is conclusive evidence of the destructive results. Exposed land left to the ravages of wind and rain, land that never again can be used for agriculture. Deeply eroded gullies in once productive fields. The gullied land is lost forever for cultivation, and the remainder of the field is more difficult to farm. Other fields are scarred by smaller finger gullies and worn by sheet erosion. Fields where most or all of the topsoil has washed away. In our rush for expansion, once fertile land has been robbed of much of its valuable topsoil. We think of agriculture as something very permanent. But in another century, if soil depletion and erosion continue at the present rate, the great farmlands of our country may become inadequate to support our population. In this progressive country of ours, anyone can rightfully ask, why has such a thing been allowed to happen? Why isn't something being done about it? Fortunately, something is being done. For more than a decade, the Soil Conservation Service, a branch of the United States Department of Agriculture, has been fostering soil conservation and corrective land use measures. It is a government service whose creed may be said to be, put every acre to its best use. Treat every acre according to its needs. That is a far-reaching objective, and its real significance is obviously the sound basis for a permanent agriculture. The Soil Conservation Service is nationally organized. Its 7 regions cover all types of farming in the country. Tracing the operations of one of the regions will show how the service acts in the best interests of the individual farmer. The southeastern region includes 9 states. It is an area old in agriculture and consequently subjected to greater soil depletion and erosion. Regional headquarters are at Spartanburg, South Carolina, where a staff of expert soilsmen, agronomists, engineers, foresters, and biologists apply their specialized knowledge to the agricultural characteristics of that region. Their fact-finding information is spread throughout the area. Each state in the region has a staff of soil conservation technicians. In South Carolina, as in most states of the country, a special law permits farmers to organize local soil conservation districts, which usually include from 1 to several counties. The districts are established by the farmers themselves on a voluntary basis. Interest in soil conservation may be aroused in a number of ways. Usually, the county agricultural extension agent shows a group of interested farmers the benefits being derived on farms in a nearby established soil conservation district. He explains the procedure necessary to form a district of their own. The signatures of 25 or more farmers are sufficient to submit a petition to the state. The state sets a date of referendum so that all the farmers in the area may vote for or against the establishment of the district. If a majority want a conservation program, the district is established and a state charter is granted. Then a group of 5 men is selected as a district governing body. They develop a cooperative conservation program designed to solve the problems of their district and continually interest farmers in that program. They obtain necessary operating assistance from the Agricultural Extension Service, the Soil Conservation Service, and other federal, state, and local agencies. As farmers' requests for conservation farm plans are made known through their district governing board, a soils expert is sent to survey and plot the characteristics of each farmer's land. This includes survey of slopes, types of soil, extent and severity of erosion, depth and quality of topsoil, and present land use. He plots the cultivated fields, the woodland, the idle land, the pastures, and the land devoted to the farm home site. The important factors are charted on an aerial map of the farm. These pertinent facts are necessary if every acre is to be put to its best use and treated according to its needs. The information on these maps becomes the basis for recommendations to be made by a farm planning technician who works out the new farm plans. Meeting with a small group of farmers whose farms adjoin, he learns their individual needs and desires. Although no two farmers' problems are ever identical, and no two farms have the same land characteristics, the rain that falls on one farm may flow onto and erode fields of a neighboring farm. So the efforts of individual farmers should fit into a program extensive enough to solve their entire conservation problems. The farm planning technician must thoroughly understand the overall problem as well as the individual problems of each farm. He must plan the corrective measures that will remedy the situation. Then, he advises and aids as the plans are executed. With the information obtained at the meeting and having the survey map to go by, the planning technician and each farmer together plan for better land use and for soil and water conservation. Together, they record the facts and